Hello, I'm Fast Lawyer. Today we are going to review VR. VR is a single-player platformer for VR released on the Steam store January 28th, 2021 by Monologic Games. It's available for the Valve Index, HTC Vive, and the Oculus Rift. It normally retails for $29.99. It's currently on a release sale, 10% off. I got a free Steam key through the Steam Creator Connect program to review this game. I tested this game out on the Oculus Quest 2 using the Oculus Link cable. It took me approximately a little over 4 hours to complete the game. I completed the game on normal difficulty. There are 3 difficulties: easy, normal, or hardcore. Once you beat a level, you also have the option to do a time trial for that level. The main difference between the difficulty levels is just more checkpoints and more lives in order to complete the level, but the challenge is really the same regardless of whether you go with easy, normal, or hardcore. You basically just have more chances on easy or normal difficulty versus hardcore. I believe on time trial you only have 1 life, so time trial, you gotta beat the level without dying at all. There are 12 total levels in the game. There's also some bonus levels that you unlock. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to unlock those levels. I think the way that you unlock them is that you have to gather all the resources, but I'm not 100% sure on that. VR does start out very simple, and the first few levels are very easy. There's not much challenge there unless you choose to go to some optional areas, which can be a little bit tricky. However, towards the second half of the game, the challenge really starts to ramp up, and by the last few levels they are very difficult, and I found myself dying quite a bit in the last 3 or 4 levels of this game. VR is running on the Unity engine. On my RTX 3080, I was getting a steady 90 frames per second. Once I lowered the super sampling from the highest, I believe it's 1.5, down to 1.4, I think it settled down. When I was at 1.5, it would run 90 frames per second steady for the most part, but then all of a sudden there would be a severe frame rate drop and the game would be a little unstable. You don't want that in a platformer, so I went ahead and I lowered super sampling to 1.4, the second highest, and it was running fine then on my RTX 3080. I did not experience any major issues or bugs. However, there were a few little bugs that I did experience. One of those bugs was that my left hand controller stopped showing in game. After I had beaten the levels, it just wouldn't show up. I'm not sure exactly why. Also, at the final boss fight, I experienced a bug. When Zen gets frozen, you're supposed to be able to throw these snowballs at the ice block, and it's supposed to break to allow him to move to avoid the falling icicles. For whatever reason, when he was close to me, I couldn't break the ice blocks, and I had to run him very far away from me in order to break those ice blocks. However, on a restart, I was able to break those ice blocks. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but luckily I was able to complete the game without too many issues. Overall, I did enjoy my time with VR. However, I will say overall I was a bit disappointed. There were several things that really kept this game from being what I would call great. It's still good, I still recommend it, but I wouldn't call it a great game. It's not even the best platformer I have played in VR. I think that still goes to Lucky's Tales. I have not played Astrobot, but I've heard that one's a really good one as well. Probably the best thing about VR is just how beautiful the game looks at times. There are some negative reviews on the Steam store mentioning a graphical downgrade. I honestly did not see that. The game might have looked better in earlier gameplay videos, but the game itself is very stunningly beautiful in VR, especially super sampled all the way up. You really notice all the little details in the background, and sometimes you can just die because you're too busy admiring all the stuff that's happening around you. So you really do get these beautiful levels that are just a joy to explore and look around with while you're doing these platforming actions. The story for me was very mediocre, very forgettable. In fact, after having played the whole game from start to finish, I really couldn't tell you what the story was about. It is that forgettable. The music, on the other hand, was very beautiful. I really liked the sound work and the music for this game, and also the level design for this game is also pretty good, pretty top notch. However, I will say that the platforming sections could have used with a little bit more depth to it. There was really only 2 attacks for this game. One attack that I found that I rarely use, which is the simple basic attack, I found that I was often using the special attack just because you could one-hit kill enemies with that, and all that is that you jump and then you hold the attack button as you're going down, and I found that just using that simple action over and over again, I could kill almost any enemies without any problems. Now there are some enemies that are immune to any attack, so you just have to avoid them, as well as some dangers where you just have to evade them as best as you can, as well as some platforms that will disappear, so you have to really time your jumps and make them as fast as possible. I did find that some of this section of the gameplay was just trial and error, and that was a bit frustrating. Also, I will say that probably the biggest negative about this game was the camera work. So the cameras here are terrible. There's already several negative reviews in regards to the cameras, and I do agree with those reviews. I just don't think that's enough to give this game a negative review. Yes, I did not like the camera, the way it worked in this game. I wish you had more control for the camera, or conversely that the camera followed you a lot better so that it wouldn't be an issue in this game. I often had neck strain from trying to find Ven, and sometimes I'd be having to look straight down, or sometimes I'd have to strain to the left or to the right, and that's even with having the snap turn option in this game turned on. Even with snap turning on, you're gonna find yourself straining your neck trying to locate Ven and trying to do some of these platforming sections. The camera work is just that bad in this game, and it makes it unpleasant to play at times, but that's not always the case, and for many sections the camera does work just fine. But there are several sections in this game where the camera is so bad and you're gonna have to strain your neck, and it just makes it a little bit unpleasant to do these sections. On top of that, there are certain sections in this game that are totally blocked off from view, so you're just gonna have to do some of these platforming sections blind. Now that does not happen very often. There was only a few times where that happened, but I did have to do some of these sections totally blind, and that's not a good thing. I will add that although Ven VR does look like a casual platformer, and it does start out as such, it is not. Towards the latter half of the game, it is very challenging and you will die very often. Keep in mind, if this game is too difficult, you can always play it on easy and you'll get more lives and more checkpoints. The challenge will still be the same somewhat, but you will get more chances at completing the levels. Lastly, I want to mention that Ven VR does use motion controllers as the only input for this game. There is no gamepad support, which is a little bit of a disappointment because I do feel that gamepads offer the precision needed in order to do a very good platformer for VR. I understand why they did motion controllers only, and there are certain sections of this game where they do make use of motion controllers, and you'll see that towards the end of this video. There's some sections where you'll be throwing these balls at the bosses while you're controlling Ven below, so you'll be doing some platforming, some light platforming while trying to also throw balls at the bosses. And there's also this VR music rhythm game thrown in there that seems very misplaced. It wasn't terrible, but I thought it was very odd choice to include that. It really just seems like the developers for this game were trying to find use of motion controllers for this game. I honestly thought the sections where motion controller was used, either for throwing the balls or for the VR music rhythm game that's thrown in there, were probably the weakest part of this game. I would have preferred those sections to be taken out and just add better control with gamepad support. That way you could truly have some really good speed runs with the precision and control of a gamepad versus what's on the motion controllers. I'm using the Oculus Quest 2. I generally think the Oculus Touch controllers are great, but I did find the buttons to be a little sticky, and the buttons just aren't always as responsive as you'd like, especially on a platformer. So if I have to rate Ven VR, I would give it a 6.5 out of 10. I do think it's a very solid platformer and has some very beautiful sections in this game. However, I found the platforming just to be a little bit too simple. The parts with the motion controls were just very weak, and like I said, the camera just isn't very good. I hope that gets patched up in a future update. And lastly, with only 12 levels, and like I said, it took me about 4 hours to complete the game, I do think $30 is a little bit too much for that. I think $20 would have been the better price for what you're getting here. Anyways, I'm Fast Lawyer. If you like my review, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of the video. Goodbye.
torpedoes and wants to destroy our ship. I'm activating laser swords. The ship has a defense field, but it may not stay intact for a long time. Cut the approaching torpedoes and don't let them reach the ship.
Welcome.